To start off, we would just like to welcome everybody to night 2 of the 2018 Candidate Forum that's put on by the AP Government class. We're going to start with the Benton City Council, so I'll let Madison, this is Madison, I'll let her read off the names for you.
Okay. We have Tim Morris, Charles Edmonds, Stanley Butch Holland, Kevin Farley, Rita Murray, Cher Riley, Drew Williams, Jean Gillahan, Stuart White, and Ann C. Riley. We'd like to apologize for the seating. We just need everybody in the camera shot. All right, tonight's proceedings will go as stated. The order of offices will stick to the pamphlet provided. For each office, the candidates will answer 3 questions. Each candidate is allotted 2 minutes to respond to each question with no rebuttal. The order of the responses has been decided at random. In addition, this is not an open mic event. The only questions asked will be the ones provided by the AP Government students.
Okay, the first question, we're going to start with Mr. Tim Moore. Is he here? No, he's not here. Okay. We're going to start with Charles Edmonds just because we randomized it as well as we could. So the first question is, what is the most common problem that you see in the city of Benton, and how do you wish to solve it?
Okay, we've got some problems in the city square that needs to be solved, and I think with some help, with some grants and things like that, it can be helped and it can be solved. And but as we go forward, it takes time to do these things, and I think it can be done. And then of course there's some problems in the park area that needs to be repaired, and I think that is going forward that I see. And I think we, with help and seeing that we can gather this in different areas of different people and different people's ideas, that we are repairing and doing some help. I know that most of you have saw the new pool that's been done. That is a good start in the park. So I think in all this, and other things that we see in the town that's going on with help with people and help with and guidance with other people and just checking with other people, with help with other people. It's not just one person's idea. We got to think about that. It's other people's help and ideas that we can go forward and make Benton a great city. Thank you.
We're going to ask the same question to Mr. Stanley Holland. Do you want me to repeat the question? He's not here? Okay. Kevin Farley.
Okay. The issues have come up the most often when I've been talking to city residents, our infrastructure here in Benton. Our city water and sewer lines have several issues. I know there's a lot of work being done, especially on the sewer lines right now. I think that what I'd like to do if I were elected would to be aggressively search for grants or long-term low-interest loans, which are available through departments such as USDA. I spoke to their office in Mayfield, our local office, and this past year over $40 million were earmarked for grants and long-term low-interest loans and were never utilized. So those $40 million just we lost, basically. So I'd like to see us go more aggressively after some grants or low-interest loans if we don't qualify for the grants. I would also like to see us maybe pay a little more attention to our city streets. Again, with the work that's been going on in the sewer, I know that's caused some problems, but I can honestly say in all the years I've lived in Benton, I don't think I've seen the roads quite in this condition. And I think, with the proper focus and, working on our budget, I think that we could allot some more money to keep our streets up. It's a safety issue, as well as it gives a poor impression for tourists that are coming through our area. And if I have time, I'll mention one last thing. Code enforcement. I've talked to some other cities on how they are effective in their code enforcement. This has been mentioned by a lot of city residents, and I've gotten some ideas from some other cities that I think if we implemented it into our code enforcement, it would help. The biggest complaints that I hear are from nuisance properties that don't seem to get improved, or the ones that do improve just takes too long to improve. So I think from looking to our neighbor cities, I think we could get some ideas to maybe beef up our code enforcement some.
All right, that same question is going to go to Miss Murray. And that was, what is the most common problem that you see in the city of Benton, and how do you wish to solve it?
Since I've been on the board for 4 years, there is a lot of problems, and we have solved a lot. And we have, believe it or not, we have worked hard on the street situation. But if you know, right down the middle of Benton, Maine, Poplar, Mayfield Highway, Oak Level Highway, Fifth Avenue are state highways. And the state highway tells us what we can and can't do. So we can have $1 million, but we can't spend it on unless they give us permission. And they're in the process of redoing 5th Street, and the state's fixing to redo Main and Poplar. It's already in the works. I'm not for sure exactly the timeline that they're giving us, but we have worked very, very hard on trying to get these streets improved, and they will be. Give us this time next year and see how the streets look. And but it just, money is a big factor, but the one thing that we have worked hard on is finding partners that will help us in our community to have things that we don't have tax money enough for, just like the swimming pool. We had an individual that gave us a lot of money. It cost $440,000 to build that. The city got a grant, and all the rest of it was paid by private funding. So we look everywhere we can to try to come up with private funding that will help us. And like our city park, we've been working on it, trying to improve it. And I personally went to the Bank of Benton, CFSB, I still call it Bank of Benton, and asked them for $10,000 to put the disc golf in, and they wrote me out a check. So there's partners out there. A lot of the companies, like the Stave Mill, they came to us, wanted to know what they could do to help with Benton. Guess what? They donated some equipment. We're updating all the children's equipment there.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Murray. That's all the time.
Thank you.
The same question is for Ms. Riley.
This is not good because I did not get the questions, apparently. So
No one was supposed to get the question.
Oh, we weren't? 'Cause
No,
I thought-
just the topics.
okay, because I thought, man, that was really good. The biggest problem, I think, when I took office 4 years ago was the infrastructure. We have a real problem with water and sewer lines, and the city has patched and worked on those two things. And they have made big improvements in it. And if you are going down the city streets and you see the patches and the places that they've worked, there's squares of concrete and patches. They've been going into the sewer lines and putting liners in there and making big improvements. And in my thinking, then that has been our biggest problem. Another thing I would love to see Benton do, and there's a group called the Benton Partnership that works hard toward this, is to make Benton prettier. And they meet every other week and work hard at events and ideas on making improvements in the city. But those are the two things I think that we need.
We're going to move on to Drew Williams, and the question is, what is the most common problem that you see in the city of Benton, and how do you wish to solve it?
Solving is a big question. I don't think anybody's really gotten around to. But it kind of is hard coming around with 10 people because you see all the big issues that come up, with the streets and with the water and sewer sanitation issues. You have the water plant that definitely is in desperate need of repair or a complete new water plant, really. You have the city beautification issues and just the general, feel that a lot of people have when they come and look at our city. the big issue that I always see when I'm out and about is trying to see more people outside and engaged, like, and just, more people at the park, more people at, at our court square, in our city centers, whatnot, trying to find a way to get more people engaged and out there. I think that we're not taking as good advantage of our 21st century tech as we can. Our calendars online don't really talk about, what activities are coming into our community on a small perspective. We have, the council meetings and the drive-ins and the Tater Day, but we don't really talk about, community, organization events, church events, and how to bring all those people together and to increase their numbers. Because, when you see more people out, it also is like, well, I need to be out, I need to be going and doing things. And there's a big issue in not having that community sense, I guess. I go a long period of time sometimes being outside, not seeing a single person. There's, usually the elderly couple or the jogger or whatnot, but, without sidewalks in a lot of our city areas, especially adding outside of town, or in more rural areas, we're kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of rambling. There we go. That'll be a good timer. I like that.
Sorry about that.
Mr. White?
We're going to move to Mr. Stuart Wyatt.
Same question, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, I'm going to go and look at this guy and go ditto on everything he said, because I agree with every word that came out of his mouth. My biggest issue is that there are no jobs in this area. I've got a son that just graduated high school, like this bunch of people are going to do, and I want to say thank you so very much for having this, because there was no other forum. It's just great that you put that on. Thank you so very much. But jobs, when these guys get out of school, where are they going to go to work? Are they going to move away? I graduated Marshall County High School. I graduated Murray State. I couldn't find a job here. I couldn't buy a job. So I went to work for the Department of Defense. I worked for the Department of Defense 25 years. It was wonderful. I enjoyed it. This is my home. This has always been my home. Even when I was working in California or in Delaware or wherever I was, this was my home, and I always came back. And then when I was a kid, this town had about 3,600 people, and it's around 4,000 now. This town is not growing. The town has to grow. If you're not growing, you're dying. This town is a dying town. You can do whatever you want. You can improve the streets. You can improve the sewer. But unless you have jobs to have people here, the town's dying. So, yeah, we definitely need to improve all of our infrastructure. We need to get some really good internet in here. The really, I'm missing a word here, but it's like fiber optic. We need that here. It's the wave of the future, folks. You got to have clean water. You got to have all those necessities, all those things that we have to have, but we also have to have jobs. And the only way to do it is have all your infrastructure correct and bring in the things that bring jobs. And currently, that has to be fiber optics.
Okay, the final candidate answering this question will be Miss Riley. And the question was, what is the most common problem that you see in the city of Benton, and how do you wish to solve it?
Well, I hate to sound like a broken record, but the infrastructure has been neglected for so many years, but I have to give credit where I think credit is due. In the last 3 or 4 years, it has come a long way, and we're on the way to making things right. And I applaud the sitting council and the mayor for doing just that. Another thing that is always a problem is money. You can't do anything without money. And those of you who know me know that I have spent 43 and a half years in the PVA office. I figured budgets. I figured tax rates. I know how things like that are done. And the money bit is the biggest problem that you can't solve without taxation. And I had a friend of mine tell me one time that he wished that he could pay $1 million in income tax. And I said, why would you want to do that? He said, well, look what I would have made. You know, if you're going to make money, you have to have ways to do it. And the only way to bring in money for a city or a municipality is through taxation with representation. And that's what we're looking for, is taxation with representation. And not necessarily to raise taxes, but if a penny extra on the $100 would make a difference, I would be for a penny on $100.
Thank you, candidates, for your statements on that question. Before we move to the second question, I just want to remind you that there's a timer right there on the first seat on the right. So if you can't see it, just let us know. We'll position it where you can. The second question, we're going to start with Miss Rita Murray. And it is, what ideas do you have in mind to help benefit the city of Benton, and how do you wish to execute them?
I would like to tell one thing that I did when I first came in. When you get elected, you get sent for training, and there was a guy there with a company called Reach Alert. And this city had no way of contacting everybody in case of emergency. I brought that idea back, and now the Reach Alert system is still going in Benton. So if we had to get hold of every person to tell them whatever the emergency is in town, we have that. We need more ways of doing that. We need, like I say, more partners. Not looking at just raising taxes, more people that will help us. There's people out here that have money that's willing to donate to help with kids' activities at the park. And also, you know, we paid off a note, $1.8 million. We turned around and borrowed $1.8 million for the sewer system to get it back going, so we didn't have to raise any taxes. So you look at ways that you can shift your money around to get the most out of the buck. Thank you.
That same question will go to Mr. Farley. What ideas do you have in mind to help benefit the city of Benton, and how do you wish to execute them?
Okay, this is a subject I feel strongly on. I think it's important that we build a strong relationship between our city and our county. I think if we work by ourselves, we get less accomplished. If we work together with our county and go to the state, a combined effort, we can do a lot more for our area. And I think that's critical to our success as a small town. I'm interested in politics. I believe strongly in like the two-party politics. But another thing I'd like to do is to truly create a nonpartisan environment in our local political offices. I feel strongly enough about this. 4 years ago, I came before the city council, made a presentation to change our city offices to nonpartisan elections. Because we had up to almost a third of our voters in the last election, or in the election 4 years ago, that couldn't vote because they were registered as independents or Republicans, and some of the offices were just Democrats running. So we cut a third of our registered voters out of the process, and I think it's important that if we lose sight of why we're here for the betterment of Benton and our community. And if party politics starts creeping in at the level that we're talking about here, I think it defeats the purpose. And I think we're doing a disservice to both the city and its residents.
That question will go to Charles Edmonds, and it is, what ideas do you have in mind to help benefit the city of Benton, and how do you wish to execute them?
I would almost say what Kevin was talking about here too. I think that is going to have to be eventually come between the county and the city. It's going to have to be maybe somebody that's impartial in the leadership there doing this to get it all together. But I think it can be done. I really believe that. I'm a person that can believe that it can be done. But it's somebody that's got to be in the center there, that's working on both sides, trying to get it together and working that this can be worked out, because I can see something looking pretty good there. That this industrial park out here that's coming. And I believe that that can be worked out. But it's going to take some work. It's going to take some good management there. And I know what you can see that's happening on Fifth Street. That is something that's went very good, I think. Something that looked like maybe wasn't going to happen there for a while. But it looks like right now it's going to be a nice area when it all gets done with the sidewalks, with the drainage system. That's going to be nice when it all gets done. When it all gets done all the way through the city, on the streets we're talking about. Because that's the state that's going to take care of all that. That's the state will be taking care of the streets going through the city. So we gotta look at all that, and when all that gets done, then the city is going to benefit from it, I think, if the right person's in there leading it. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. White, what ideas do you have in mind to help benefit the city of Benton, and how do you wish to execute them?
Well, I hate to sound like a broken record repeating infrastructure, but I will, and then I'll get off that. We've got a water system that at least I had several people come to me and say, you know, my water's out again, my water's out again, my water's out again, and ask me to run to try and address that, you know, to try to make sure that we can get the infrastructure fixed. Their main concern of the people I've spoken with has been infrastructure. You know, you got to have clean water. You got to have a lagoon that's cleaned properly for your sewage. You got to have the sewer, I don't know, what do you call the sewer lines? Yeah, that's it. The sewer lines that are functioning properly, and I'm glad that they're addressing that. We have to have growth. We've got to marry up with the county. Our current judge executive is working hard to try and bring jobs here. And regardless of who wins in another month or so, you know, the next judge executive is going to be doing the same. And we need to marry up with them. We've got to bring prosperity back to this county. We have to.
Thank you, Mr. White. We're going to ask Miss Ann Riley, what ideas do you have in mind to help benefit the city of Benton, and how do you wish to execute them?
Well, excuse me. I think that our only salvation at this point is grants, and we need a good grant writer to search these out for us and find them, because I've never written a grant, and I certainly don't want to try to. The idea of partnering with the county is a good idea. But you know what? It takes all of us. We need to all be at the city council meetings. We need to be at the fiscal court meetings. We need to be involved. And I don't mean just part of us. I mean all of us. And not just in an election year, all the time. It takes a village. That's just all there is to it. And if we all partner together, we can get this done, and we can get the city of Benton on track and make it where people will want to come here, where businesses will search us out rather than us having to go look for them. So that's what I think.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. Mr. Williams, the same question. What ideas do you have in mind to help benefit the city of Benton, and how do you wish to execute them?
I'm going to piggyback off of her thing, which talks about, you know, everybody kind of getting involved. But again, going back to the website infrastructure, as well as your, you know, Facebook and social media and other forms. We just have an issue with getting people involved. It feels like not only here in this county, but across rural America and just America in general. There's a lot of apathy that kind of goes around, and so it's easy to feel like there's nothing happening when you don't see anything happening, you don't hear about anything happening. So kind of it wouldn't take $1 million or a godsend to get those LED boards. They're like $560 a piece, and put 3 of them across the city to show events, to show things that are happening. It wouldn't be hard to update our websites to be more intuitive and being able to reach out to people. It wouldn't be hard to set up our Facebook events to show more things and to try to get more people involved. It wouldn't be hard to set up public opinion polls on what activities, not large, like multi-million-dollar activities, but things like the Kindness Park project and other aspects around our city that are just a small chunk of money, or take a little bit of investment by the community. It's a small amount or a large amount of hands, just depending on the project, that can really just set everything forward. It doesn't take $1 million to do some of the small things. This spring, I asked the mayor, and then I went and painted the gazebo in front of the electrical building out there on the Y in Mayfield. It took me 3 hours and $29. And it's going to look nice for a couple of years. It's not a full fix, but it helps. And it makes us have a better side of our city. Thank you.
Okay, for our final candidate on the second question, we're going to ask Ms. Shara Riley. What ideas do you have in mind to help benefit the city of Benton, and how do you wish to execute them?
Well, I think with all my heart, our biggest plus is each other, and having each other to work with and to bounce ideas off of. The Bible says that iron sharpens iron, and people sharpen one another. And that's just true. So with ideas and people that are proactive and want to be involved, coming up with ideas like the Kindness Park, that was going to be a mural that just started. Now the city has donated property for that, and that's grown from a mural to a park. And we're going to need volunteers and help for that. But the ideas have grown and grown, and getting together with each other and talking about these things makes things happen. We have to have involvement and people that love the town and care about what happens. And without it, we can't go anywhere.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. The final question for Benton City Council will start with Mr. Williams. How do you plan to involve the residents in the bettering of the community?
Well, it's unfortunately kind of what I've been talking about, so I'm gonna hit back on some things again, I guess. There's 2 things that people hate most, and that's changing the way things are. So it's kind of hard to. People look around town and they see that things aren't going the way they want, and they kind of get apathetic towards the situation. Or you have younger people growing up and they see things that it isn't the way that it's ever going to go for them. It feels so that they don't want to get involved in the situation. Trying to possibly incentivize more community service from a younger age would be very beneficial. Trying to get more after school or weekend events for high school students, things that they can put on resumes, things that they're interested in. Again, trying to feel out where people want to go, and then helping push them in that direction instead of trying to pull them as they don't want to do those kinds of activities. Trying to get a larger group of our retired residents into activities that could be very beneficial to them. Again, I'm running over myself from previous questions, so I'm just going to give my time up.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. We're going to ask Ms. Ann Riley, how do you plan to involve the residents in the bettering of the community?
Well, I don't know of any way to involve other people other than to stay involved myself. several years ago, I became involved with the Children's Arts Center, and some of you all may not know that it is the only freestanding children's art center in the Commonwealth. There are two other children's art centers, but they're located within a library or within an office building. We involve all kinds of children every afternoon after school, and I think that is phenomenal that we have that many kids at least having something to do after school. Also, I'm a member of the Benton Partnership. We have provided things for people to do, like the cruise-ins, the holiday shopping spree. We put in a pump track that I didn't even know what a pump track was, but we put in a pump track for the cyclers I had no idea how many cyclers we had in the county, but the mountain bike kids out at the school are thrilled to death with it. It's up here in the park. We recently raised awareness of our agricultural community with the Farm to Fork event. Farmers were thrilled to death. We gave a Farmer of the Year award, a Young Farmer of the Year award. We gave a scholarship to the culinary class and one to the FFA, and that involved all kinds of people. I mean, we had a huge turnout for that, and that's the only way I know to draw people into it is to stay involved myself. That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay, Mr. Wyatt, how do you plan to involve the residents in the bettering of the community?
Well, I'm going to have to go back to my military previous life, even though I was a civilian with the military. But I got to go back there. I was on the Delaware Governor's Safety Task Force. I was on the Delmarva Agriculture Safety Task Force, you know, where we got the residents involved in trying to, especially with the Delaware Safety Task Force, was we introduced legislation. We've got helmet law passed for kids. We provided helmets for the kids. And this was all funded by the Air Force and DuPont. You know, there's things that you can do to get the community involved, and it has to be event oriented. With the agriculture, you know, we were able to get some of the farmers to come in and we talk about things that make their life safer, how to do things. You know, agriculture is the most hazardous job in the United States. And, you know, we were able to reduce mishaps by getting them together to talk about safer venues or safer ways to do things. Ultimately, you know, people have to want to be involved. You can provide the venue for them to be involved and go from there. And a lot of that involves, let me try the right word here, to go to industry. And we have a lot of industry that we can piggyback off of and get them involved. And then we find that people get involved, especially when it's the young kids. You know, the Art Center is a wonderful, wonderful thing. I went in Murray to the Penguin Project. It was a great event, you know, where their disabled kids are getting them involved in arts. There's a lot of things that we can do and should do, and that don't cost a lot of money. But it does require some inventive thinking. I don't know if I answered your question on it, but I gave it a shot.
Thank you, Mr. Wyatt. Ms. Shara Riley, how do you plan to involve the residents in the bettering of the community?
I think the best way to involve people is to ask. There are things that are coming up like the Kindness Park, and there are things at the partnership events that they've provided. And when those events are provided, people do come. And but if we ask people to get involved, I think they will. I really believe that. There's going to be a lot of money needed for the Kindness Park, a lot of work needed for that, and it'll take all of us to get that done. The Kindness Park, by the way, is behind the Arts Center. It's going to be. It's not yet. Behind the Arts Center and between the Arts Center and Poplar. And so there's an empty lot there. The city has donated that for that, and there'll be fountains, benches, picnic tables, the mural that from the high school, at least one of those, and it's going to take a lot of money and effort to get it done. And so I'm asking now that you get involved, and just it's so impressive to me that you are all here, because it means that you do care and that you are involved. And so just especially as high school students, we need you all to be involved in government later and to take an active role. We need your ideas and we need your hard work to keep things going.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. The same question will now go to Mr. Farley. How do you plan to involve the residents in the bettering of the community?
Well, I think social media, as Drew mentioned, is an important way to get the word out, get people involved. Everybody's on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And to kind of build on what Shara said, to ask people to get involved, ask for our city's residents' input on what they would like to see. I'm a huge sports fan, and I know in a ball game, momentum is everything. And if you get residents involved and find out what they are wanting, and if you try to implement some of that stuff, you will see those people, they feel like they have ownership in it, and they are more likely to get involved. And you get a couple of things done, and you start to build momentum. We create the right environment between the city, county, and our state, and maybe we bring in a new business or two. If we can do some of all of these things and look to the city residents for their input, what do you want to see? What would you like us to do? The more input we get from our city to the residents, then I think the more active they will be and take part and take pride that they had a hand in whatever we create. And once you build momentum, you can accomplish just about whatever you want to accomplish. Thank you. And thank you to you students for putting this on tonight. This has been great.
Thank you, Mr. Farley. Same question to Ms. Murray. How do you plan to involve the residents in the bettering of the community?
The way I've been involving residents in the last 4 years has been active myself. If they don't see the councilman and the mayor involved and take an interest in their city, they won't take interest either. So the people will volunteer. A lot of people don't have money, but they've got time that they can help retirees. And one thing I'm just going to speak this out. In 4 years, I've never missed a meeting. I'm involved in every organization that's doing anything in this city. And that's what we need on the city council, is leadership up here that will bring ideals to y'all and take your ideals and make something of it. Just like the kids at South Marshall asked for that disc golf. We didn't disappoint them. We didn't have $10,000, but we went to CFSB and they gave it to us. There's other organizations, State Mill, different Champion, different ones that's helping on the side that you don't even know about. The Lions Club down at the park. So if you want to be involved, come to one of the councilmen. We'll get you involved.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. We're going to ask Mr. Edmonds, how do you plan to involve the residents in the bettering of the community?
What I see that we have done in the past for citizens, that we have put up different things for the city for them to use in, as the years that I've been on it. And when they come to me, as being in business these years, they come to me and they talk to me about something. About what about this? What about, we'd like to do this. We'd like to have this. The only thing I know to do then is take it to the council. We talk about it, And we've got a mayor now that understands and she listens. When we tell her something about what we'd like to see and what we hear the citizens talking about, she listens and she kindly talks it over with the council, and we talk it over and see if it's going to be all right, And a lot of these things happen that way, that we put, you know, in wherever they want them, you know, what they do. And that works good because that way we find out what the citizens want. You know, we don't just go out and put something somewhere and if we don't know what they want them or not. We have to find out. I'd like to know if people want them before you do something. But if they come and ask you and we talk about it, then we try to work it out, you know. And so, you know, it's just been wonderful to be on the council for 21 years working these out. I hope I'm on it another 2 years. But anyway, it's been a blessing, and I'm thankful that y'all listened to us tonight. I'm glad y'all all come tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates, for your statements. We're going to ask the candidates for county attorney to come up next, but we're going to have to do some rearranging up here. So while we're in transition, we just want to say thank you to all the candidates who came out. Okay. We want to thank the Benton Women's Club and the Benton Juniorette Club for providing and serving refreshments that are in the back. And we want to thank everyone in the audience for coming out. We also want to remind the candidates that if you brought any materials to share with the public, there are tables over there for you to set your things. Thank you. Okay, for county attorney, we have candidates Jason Darnell and Zachary Bryan. We just want to remind the candidates that the questions are completely randomized, so the order in which you'll answer them are not biased in any way. The first question is going to go to Mr. Darnell, and it is, why do you wish to be county attorney?
Pass. Well, first of all, I just want to thank, do I need to lean into this, or can you? Can lift it up. Okay. First of all, I want to thank the AP class and Coach Carrick for putting this on. When I was in high school, AP stood for Associated Press. I don't even think we had AP when I was in high school. But why do I want to be county attorney? Because I love being involved in my community. I've been doing it for the past 14 years, and it provides so many opportunities to help. And not just in criminal court, you can help folks in criminal court, but you can help folks in fiscal court, you can help folks in family court, you can help folks in family court. I just said that, but so many opportunities to help people. And I enjoy being involved in my community. This wasn't a topic, I don't think, so I wasn't really prepared for this, but I've enjoyed doing it. Over the past 14 years, we've had lots of successes in the county attorney's office. Prosecuted DUIs at 88%. I've handled over 20,000 cases. We've collected child support at an efficiency ratio of that puts us in number one out of 100. Number one in Western Kentucky, top 15 in the state of Kentucky. Some other things that we've done is we've helped folks with Casey's Law. Casey's Law is kind of a new revelation in the law. It helps folks get mandatory treatment when they need treatment. We can help folks with guardianship. That's where adults are in need of somebody to help take care of them. We've handled lots of those cases over the years. Mental health emergencies, we can do those if somebody's endangering themselves or somebody else. But that's just 3 or 4 different areas that I've enjoyed doing to help folks. And then in the criminal aspect of it, the number one issue is substance abuse, and we have shifted away from incarceration and toward treatment. And so maybe I'll get a chance to address that a little bit more later on, but I think my time's up. So.
Thank you, Mr. Darnell. Mr. Bryan, we're going to ask you the same question. Why do you want to be county attorney?
Thank you very much. I am Zach Bryan, for those of you who don't know me, candidate for county attorney, and I want to thank the library for hosting this event, the AP government class. This is great, and Coach Carrick also for putting this on. You know, Coach, you set me up on my first date with my wife, so when you ask me to do something, I feel a bit obligated to you at this point. But no, here's why I want to be county attorney, because I love this county, I love this community, and I want to make it as good as I can make it. You know, when it comes to politics, I've been frustrated. The more I watch it, sort of the less I like it. And we're in a situation now where I've got an opportunity to make a difference here, and I've always tried to make a difference in everything I was involved in. As city attorney for the city of Benton, I try to do my best to be as effective and proactive as possible. I've been the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, where I created a young professionals organization. So Stuart talked earlier about getting young people jobs in this community, and to do that we have to increase the visibility of our young, talented, motivated people in this community, because we're here and we're trying to make a difference. So, you know, going back to politics, getting frustrated with it, I voted and I complained, but I didn't see much changing. So when I talked to Jeff Edwards and he told me he wasn't running again, I thought, you know, I know how to do this job. I've practiced in every area of law that the county attorney has practiced in, just from the other side of the table. This is something that I can do to make a positive impact on our community. And I've got plans for this county. You know, I think that in a county like this, in rural western Kentucky, one of the things that we don't do enough of is that we don't think about the future. My roots go as deep as anybody in this county, but I'm more concerned about what's happening 20 years from now than I am what happened 20 years ago. And if we don't start thinking forward about things, then we're never going to catch up, because we've got problems in this community. We've got problems that are getting worse. And if we don't come up with new ideas, if we don't come up with new solutions, if we don't get people that are energized and passionate about helping this community in whichever way they can, then I think that we're in trouble. And so I want to provide this community with new answers and new approaches. And I want to turn us in a different direction, a more positive direction, because I think we need to focus on the future more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan. The second question, we're going to start with Mr. Darnell. What problems does the county face that you would like to have a role in solving as county attorney? How will you solve them?
Well, is it problems or the number one problem?
Just problems in general.
Okay. Well, the number one problem is substance abuse by far and away. You know, if I've made this comment before when I'm talking to DARE students or going into the high schools or the middle schools. If I could somehow snap my fingers and erase substance abuse, then I'd likely be out of a job. We might not even need a county attorney. We could probably have one prosecutor for Western Kentucky, and that would be it, because that solves a lot of your incarceration problems. It solves a lot of your thefts. It solves a lot of your burglaries. It solves a lot of your child abuse problems. It solves about 90% of societal's problems if we could wipe away substance abuse. So that would be one thing that I would really want to address and wipe out if I could. To do that, it's kind of a supply and demand situation. Without the demand, there is no supply. And so to do that, you have to, I think it's basically a two-step approach, is education and then corrective action. Education starts with going into the schools, talking to the young folks, DARE groups, Truth and Consequences programs, a GEMS program that we're getting ready to start to go into South Marshall Middle School to start addressing some of these at-risk children and to educate them about the dangers that they're facing. The second part of that is corrective action. Corrective action means pointing them in a new direction. And part of that, in some cases, does involve incarceration. We try to keep that as a last resort for that. About 2 hours ago, I left court and had to put one of my best friends from high school in jail because he failed another drug test. But I went and talked to him on the jail line before I left and said that, are you ready for treatment? And he said yes. And so we're going to do everything we can to try to get you into that treatment. So that's, my time's up, so I'll pass the mic now.
Okay, Mr. Bryan. What problems does the county face that you would like to have a role in solving as county attorney? How will you solve them?
Thanks. You know, I see the biggest problem in this county is related to what he talked about, but I think it's child abuse and neglect. This is a very important question because of the seriousness of this problem in this county. Last year, Marshall County had more child abuse and neglect than Graves County, more than Callaway County, and even more than McCracken County. Folks, that's unacceptable. Our kids aren't getting protected. We don't have the resources, and we're not using them the way that they need. So I've developed a plan called what I call the Marshall County Model. And I developed this plan with national resources, national agencies, state agencies, regional agencies, and I've been endorsed because of this plan by the National Association of Social Workers. And my plan is this: educated prevention and early intervention. Okay, educated prevention means that we've got to know the problem that we're dealing with, right? Every child that's in the court system has a file sitting in the county attorney's office. But right now, we're not keeping up with that data. We don't know how many kids are in the system, how old they are, where they live, how long they've been in the system, how many of each type of case that we've got, what the probability of success of those cases are. We've got to understand the problem before we can attack it. So in my first month as county attorney, we're going to compile this data. And then once we know it, once we can look at the problem, we're going to be able to more effectively target our resources. If physical abuse is a problem in one certain area of the county, we can work with the school system and churches to be able to identify that problem and to be able to know what to do with it. But we also have to hold adults accountable if our kids aren't being protected. I talked to someone who's in the child abuse system that said in the last 17 years, they only know of one criminal prosecution for failure to report child abuse. In Kentucky, if you know about child abuse and you don't report it, that's a crime. Now, there may be a few more than that, but the point is we're not doing it enough. We're not holding our adults accountable, and it's time to start doing that. So my question is, if we've got these problems in the county and we haven't done anything in the last decade and a half
Thank
to
you,
fix
Mr.
it,
Bryan. That's all the time we have for that
what are
question.
we going to do next?
All right, the next question is, we're going to start with Mr. Bryan.
The question is, by the time an alleged criminal is standing across from you in the courtroom, it is too late. What proactive measures might you take to intervene before this happens?
Well, that's another good question. And, you know, I think that when you deal with an alleged criminal standing across from you, the problem is the damage is already done, right? Just like I was talking about with child abuse. We're waiting too long at this point to do anything about it. We're reactionary. Once they get brought into the child abuse, once they get brought into the court system, after a child has been hurt, after a crime has been committed, then we'll deal with them. We'll use bond conditions or sentencing or use a prevention plan for parents. It's too late at that point. Once people get in the system, they are much, much more likely to get caught in the system, and you'll see them again and again and again. So I think it starts with education. I think it starts with prevention. I think, like I said, we need to analyze what's going on in this county so we know how to target our resources. Last year, the Marshall County Attorney's Office was budgeted just from local tax dollars over $460,000, with more coming from Frankfort. We've got the resources, folks. It's there. We've just got to put them in the right places. We've got to reprioritize to make sure that we know what problems we're facing and we can use them most effectively. We have to understand the problem to be able to do that. Once we can do that, then we can encourage people to get involved in the community and encourage community resources to reach out to specific groups of people. I think we need someone in the county attorney's office as a resource coordinator. If someone that's struggling comes in there, we've got to know where to point them, and not just say you can go to this agency in Paducah, but say I'm going to call so-and-so for you. They're going to expect you tomorrow. If you show up, we're going to get you help. And we've got to know where we're going to put these people. And we've got to encourage other resources to come into the county. When it comes to substance abuse, we've got to start working with medical and mental health professionals. Accountability programs are great. 12-step programs are great. But the powerful drugs on the street require professional intervention. So I think those are the types of steps we need to take.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan. Mr. Darnell, the question goes to you. By the time an alleged criminal is standing across from you in the courtroom, it is too late. What proactive measures might you take to intervene before this happens?
Well, it depends on who's actually before the court and why they're there. For example, the juvenile offender has to be treated very differently than the lifetime criminal, so to speak. So we have to take every aspect, all the factors into consideration when we're talking about that. But again, it goes back to what I kind of answered on the last question. It starts with education, getting into the schools, making sure that kids are aware of their consequences. And that's what I've tried to do every chance I get over the past 14 years is to take every chance that I can to go into our schools and talk about it, whether it's teenage pregnancy, whether it's drug abuse, whether it's financial situations. Whatever it is, I go into the schools and talk to them and educate them about choices and consequences of those choices. The best being, I think, was this past fall in the South Marshall Middle School, the Truth and Consequences program. That was a great program. We set up a mock courtroom where we actually had the kids go through different scenarios. Of course, I was a prosecutor. I had a juvenile probation officer with me. Judge Faust was the judge, and we ran them through scenarios. And I think that was a very successful program. The feedback we got from that was just overwhelming. So I think more of that is necessary to teach our kids what the consequences of their actions are, and that they go well beyond what may happen in just the courtroom. For example, when I talk to the DARE kids, I talk to them about somebody that turns 18 and gets a felony. Their life is going to be different from that point forward. So we've got to make sure that they understand that consequences can be a lifetime of consequences. Choices can make for a lifetime of consequences.
Thank you, candidates, for your statements. We're going to move on to candidates for state representative. So if we could have Chris Freeland and Linda Story Edwards come up, please.
All right, to get started, we're going to start with Mr. Freeland. The first question is, what problems would you like to solve as representative in the State House?
Well, thanks for having us here tonight, and this is such a valuable tool to have for the kids, for our adults, and with it being on Marshall County Daily and on cable, certainly everyone can be involved, so thank you for doing this. The biggest problems for this state, what was your, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You're good. What problems would you like to solve as representative in the State House?
Well, there's several problems that we have and several opportunities that we're missing out on, and I guess you could call those problems for us here in the 6th District. And that would be the job creation that we need here, and I think that we are working toward that, and we're starting to see some benefits in this, and I would like to be a part of legislation, be a part of collaboration with working with our current judge executives, our mayors, our state representatives in our other districts and business leaders, and get a plan together in place to actually recruit and promote these companies to come here so that our people can benefit, our communities can thrive. And you do that and you start seeing governments, local governments that have funding, you start seeing communities getting cleaned up, you start seeing churches full. It's just it compounds on each other, and I think that is our biggest issue here in the state. And of course, you can throw the state pension, obviously, is something that is being addressed, and it certainly will require lots of attention for many years from now. And there's several issues, but I will give up my time there.
Okay, Ms. Edwards, same question. What problems would you like to solve as representative in the State House?
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here tonight. Thank you, Coach Carrick. It's a great event. And the AP government class, you all are really good at this. There are several problems that I would like to help solve as your state representative. The first one being strengthen the middle class. And that is a major problem right now because it appears that, let me scoot over, that our Republican legislature, our Republican governor, which we have a trifecta now, and it seems like that they are trying to dismantle the middle class by doing away with prevailing wage and making Kentucky a right-to-work state. I would really like to work on this. I would like to see our working families have money in their pocket and just be able to live the life that they deserve. Also, the pension funds. It's just been disastrous for the teachers, and not just the teachers, but for all the state workers. I mean, lots of nights we didn't know what was going to happen. Just nerve-wracking. And they finally did fund it, but it's just for 2 years. So we have to keep a watch on everything. I would love to go to Frankfort and be the voice be the vision, and be the watchdog for all of you all so you can have a better life. And I'm one of you. Whatever I need, you need. And that's what I want to help with. I just want us to have a good life and be healthy and be a little prosperous.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. We're going to have you start on the next question. It reads, what legislature do you wish to pass in order to protect our district on the state level?
To protect our district? Now, are you talking, repeat, I mean, I need a little more information. What do you want me to protect? People? Schools?
Just the people in our district.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd like to begin with the citizens. I think we have an excellent police force, possibly more policemen, and of course our schools. I am, since January the 23rd, I have just been torn up, I guess you would say, over the episode at the school. But I do think that our sheriff and the sheriff's department handled it with total professional, all the officers, it just fell into place. They knew exactly what to do. But I'm saying I do think we need some more. We can't be safe enough at the school. And possibly, you know, we need some more officers. We need, of course, I'm for the perimeter fence. I'm for a lot of things to make our schools safer.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Mr. Freeland would like to ask you the same question. What legislature do you wish to pass in order to protect our district on the state level?
Well, certainly going into law enforcement, I know the county attorney candidates had talked about the opioid epidemic and just the drug epidemic in general, and that's something that is just devastating to our state. It's devastating to our nation. It's ruining communities and ruining families, ruining lives. It's killing an average of 4 Kentuckians a day. And we've got to do something about this. And we've got to do it in 2 different ways. I think legislation is certainly necessary. And I would like to see Kentucky be one of the toughest states on crime in regards to drug dealers and drug traffickers. I would like for the drug dealers and traffickers to just avoid Kentucky altogether. And maybe other states will do the same. And for the people that have the addiction, many of those have gotten this addiction from going to the doctor and just having a problem with pain pills and having trouble with pain. And they're not bad people. So I would like to see better treatment options for them and real treatment options. And I've talked to several who do this kind of work, and it takes, you know, a year for treatment. It's not a 15-day, a 30-day in-house treatment. It's a long process, and we need to be very sympathetic. We need to be working with these people. We need to, you know, have means where that they can reclaim their lives after they've conquered this addiction or learn to deal with it at least. But I think, you know, there's a 2-pronged approach, and I think legislation certainly to be tough on crime and tough on the dealers and traffickers is certainly legislation I think is essential here.
Okay, for the third and final question, we're going to start with Mr. Freeland. Without taking a specific stance on controversial issues, how do you plan on working with others who disagree on controversies, such as medicinal marijuana use, solving the opioid crisis, the right to work versus union movement, and the pension crisis?
Well, certainly I think that being able to work with others is probably the key to this. And I was on the Benton City Council for 4 terms, and I've worked with 2 different mayors, 2 different city council, or several different city council members, 2 different attorneys, and certainly worked with all the different mayors and judge executives here in the county, and always had a great relationship with them. I think you could ask any of the city council people that are up here this evening, they'll tell you I'm their friend. And it's not because of political reasons, it's because we work well together, and you have the common goal of achieving something that needs to be done. It's not a political issue. The opioid epidemic, the state pension, you know, all those things, they're not political issues. They're issues that need to be taken care of, right? You know, whether it's a Democrat lean, Republican lean, it doesn't matter. We need to do what's best for this area. And that's the way I will approach it. I've got a long history of working well with others. Have a 25-year career in broadcasting, and you work with everybody. You know, I've had every single charitable group in the county. I've interviewed them, worked with them on projects. Every single of our judge executives, past and present, our state representatives, our state senator, and all of our business leaders, industry leaders, community leaders, schools, churches, I've had them all on, and I work very well with them. And it's the working well, it's the putting people above party, I think, that is key to doing this, and doing it in the right way, doing it in a right way that respects values, respects what we stand for here in Western Kentucky. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freeland. Okay, Ms. Edwards, without taking a specific stance on controversial issues, how do you plan on working with others who disagree on controversies, such as medicinal marijuana use, solving the opioid crisis, the right to work versus union movement, and the pension crisis?
Well, as a retired teacher, I have worked with many, many families in this county. And as your representative, I would be a delegate-style representative, which means that I will go to Frankfort and I will speak for you. And I will help with all those situations, but I will be in your ballpark. And I want you to delegate to me what you would like to happen. Now, I do know the opioid, it must be corrected. And people need help. People are hurting. People are hurting in all areas, whether it be the medical, whether it be pensions. People are hurting. And it's time that we work across the aisle. I can work with anyone as long as we have a common goal and we're seeking the right answers to make our lives better. It's, we're at a crossroad, and we need a person in Frankfort that is willing to collaborate, work with the other party, work with anyone that's willing to listen, form a coalition, and get the job done instead of just this side over here and this side and nothing happens. We must form coalitions and get the jobs done for y'all. Clean everything up. Get us back on the fast track of living a better life.
Thank you, candidates. We're going to move on to State Senator. So if we can transition, please. Our candidates for State Senator are Mr. Danny Carroll and Miss Julie Tennyson. Just one more reminder, candidates, there is a timer clock right there at the first seat on the right, and all of the questions are randomized, so the order that we will be asking are completely random. The first question is going to go to Mr. Carroll first, and that question is, what types of actions will you take to grow jobs in the state of Kentucky?
First of all, I too would like to thank the AP class for putting this on. Mr. Carrick, thank you. Want you all to know that every decision that I make in Frankfort, I think of you. I have a daughter that's in high school, and I'm determined that I'm not going to leave our state in the shape it's in right now for you to deal with. Made some very difficult decisions this past year, but it's to make sure that you don't have to deal with them and your kids don't have to deal with them. What I would do to create jobs in our state and in our region, ladies and gentlemen, we're doing it. We have done it. We have created an environment in this state. We have, in 2017 alone, 17,200 new jobs, $9.2 billion in new investment, record unemployment. Our workforce today is the largest it's ever been in the history of this state. We have laid a foundation within state government to create an environment for successful business and industry in our state. There was some impatience about business and industry coming to other parts of the state. It's here, folks. It's here. 500 jobs announced in Ballard County. Marshall County will be hearing an announcement in the very near future related to economic development. Something I'm very proud of, and I know that our judge executive has worked on that. I've helped through being a liaison with the state. We have jobs coming to Murray, you hear, almost on a monthly basis, jobs coming in. Mayfield had some new industry coming in. Paducah just recently announced a hemp processing plant, which will create about 100 jobs. So those things are happening in our region and happening throughout our state, and there is a lot of momentum in our state right now, and we just need to build on that and continue doing the things that we're doing. Through tax reform, the basic package that we prepared during the last session, there were some changes within the tax structure that makes our state a more business-friendly environment. We have gone, as far as the state business tax climate from 33rd to 18th in the country. So we have made progress, and ladies and gentlemen, it's working. What we're doing is working. They are good-paying jobs that are coming in Ballard County. Those jobs will average $26 an hour. The ones in what's coming in Paducah with the hemp processing plant, $40,000 a year. What we're about to see in Marshall County, those will also be good-paying jobs, and there are other industry recruitments.
Thank you, candidate. That's all the time we have.
Thank you.
The same question will go to Ms. Tennyson. What types of actions will you take to grow jobs in the state of Kentucky?
Well, there are 3 things that I would do to grow jobs. Number 1, I would recruit remote workers. I have friends that have gone away to college, they've gotten a job, and they've brought the job back home with them. And that's important, that we are able to recruit remote workers that bring their jobs back home with them. The second thing that I would do is grow our startups and small businesses. I'm an attorney. I help startups and small businesses. It's what I do. It's what I enjoy. I'll be able to do a lot more of that and be able to make the connections for people if I'm elected as your next state senator. I am opposed to service sales taxes. I think they hurt our small businesses. I've talked to veterinarians who were upset that sales tax were put on small animals, but not on large animals, and they thought that they should not be put on anyone. Also, taxing car repair, taxing lawn care, taxing housekeeping, taxing nonprofits, taxing activities that people do with their family, like bowling. All of those should not have happened. Those are hurting our small businesses, and they're the backbone of our economy. The last thing that I would do is make sure that our economic development dollars are going in the right spots, and that we have strong, enforceable contracts to pull back those dollars if the company does not bring long-term, good-paying jobs. I thank you. I thank the AP students for allowing me to be here today, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. For the second question, we're going to start with Mr. Carroll. Do you support long-term structural spending reforms? Why or why not?
Long-term structural spending reforms?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you referring to tax reform?
Yes.
Okay. I do support tax reform, and I would like to respond to a comment that my opponent just made. The package that we passed during this past session was in no way intended to be the end product with tax reform. We have a $40 to $60 billion unfunded liability that this state has to pay for our pension systems. We put $1.1 billion extra dollars into the teachers' pension system over the biennium. We funded that system fully for the first time in over a decade. We cut many budgets across the state government, 6.25%. We cut several programs that were crucial to this state. The Friskies program, several others. Child care assistance was cut. Grants to the Department of Veterans, funding for them was cut. The last part of the session, there was an agreement made. We needed to raise $500 million to be able to put those programs and many others, education-based programs primarily, back into the budget. So the decision was made as a compromise to put this package together that raised $400 million, $500 million to be able to put these programs back. We will continue to do tax reform. We have committees within our caucus that are working as we speak to develop the package that we will utilize to look at all the tax expenditures. Those are tax exemptions. We actually exempt more revenue in our state than we bring in revenue. So we will look at those. We will look at other packages. The goal is to create a balance, to broaden the base with our taxes by taxing services. There are many options. You can raise the sales tax. There are other things you can do. But we look for a balance that we increase the service taxes, you add, you broaden the base, and as you do that, you reduce income taxes. Our goal is at the end of this, with the final packages, to do away with income taxes in the state. Thank you.
Thank you. For Ms. Tennyson, the same question. Do you support long-term structural spending reforms or tax reforms? Explain your answer.
Well, I support being fiscally responsible with the tax dollars that we have, first and foremost. I support looking at those tax incentives that we give away to corporations and determine, are they really bringing in long-term, good-paying jobs? Those are the first two steps that I would take towards tax reform. Now, this time, internet sales tax is able to be put on businesses. So things that you buy on the internet from a company that's out of state, we're going to get that tax revenue. And that was tax revenue that was not put in our budget. And so we have got to look at those tax revenues that we're going to get from that and make sure that we spend them well. As far as spending, education has to be a top priority. It has to be. It is the driver for jobs. It's the driver for our economy. Education makes us a competitive state for companies. We also have to look at spending on roads and infrastructure because people have to be able to get from place to place. That's the second thing that we have to look at that's considered state problems. We also have to look at education. Oh, I said that already. We have to look at health care as well. We have to make sure that we make health care more affordable so more people can be on health care. It's terrible when you're sick and you're not able to go to the doctor because you can't afford to. And we've got to find ways to make sure that health care is more affordable for everyone. So, and part of making it more affordable will reduce the state's burden for health care. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tennyson. Our last question for the night will start with Mr. Carroll again. Without taking a specific stance on controversial issues, how do you plan on working with others who disagree on controversies such as medicinal marijuana use, solving the opioid crisis, the right to work versus union movement, and the pension crisis?
I think the greatest thing you can do is listen, and I have a history with my first 4 years in office. I work with Mayor Dotson very well, have assisted her in getting some projects moving forward. I've worked with the mayor of Paducah with getting some projects moving, the judge executive in here in Marshall, McCracken, Carlisle is a Democrat. So I have a history of being able to work with all of those folks, and there are some fundamental differences between the two parties, and some of the things you're just not going to agree on. Right to work is one of those things. The medicinal marijuana, I think that's one of those things that at some point we will reach a compromise on that, and I think that's the key to it, and that's the one thing that stifles government is an unwillingness to compromise. I'm not in favor of recreational marijuana, but I do firmly believe that there is some value, some medicinal purpose to medical marijuana. I have some conditions that I need to get comfortable with. I don't believe in home growth. I believe it needs to be treated like any other medication. Look at the opioid epidemic. I think we're pretty much all on the same page with that we need treatment. We need dollars invested in treatment. We need to hold the drug dealers accountable. Right to work, that's just one of those fundamental differences. The reality of it is with right to work, many businesses, industry won't even look at you if you're not right to work, and we missed out on a lot of opportunities because of that. The paper mill reopening, right to work factored into that. So those are 500 good paying jobs that came about because we did pass that. The pension reform, there are just a lot of different opinions on that, and you can have opinions, but the reality of it is we have a fiscal crisis that we must deal with, and that's the $40 to $60 billion unfunded liability that we set a path during some legislation that's under appeal with the Supreme Court now for a 30-year plan to pay off that unfunded liability.
Thank you, candidate. That's all the time we have.
Thank you.
Ms. Tennyson, the same question to you. Without taking a specific stance on controversial issues, how do you plan on working with others who might disagree on controversies, such as medicinal marijuana use, solving the opioid crisis, the right to work versus union movement, and the pension crisis?
Well, you can say all you want that you listen to people, but there's a difference between listening and being heard. There's a difference between listening and understanding where the other person's coming from, walking a mile in that person's shoes, so to speak, being able to look at things from their point of view. Now, I think it's important that I listen to the poorest person in the county as much as I listen to the richest person. Every single person is valuable, has an opinion, and should be listened to. I think it's my job to represent all, not just some, to represent all of the people and to take their point of view into consideration and to do the most good for the most people. We can't just continue to concentrate on the opinions of a few. We have to take everyone's opinion into consideration. This last term, I was disappointed that I felt like our teachers weren't heard, they weren't valued, they weren't listened to. And I really feel like that in order to solve the pension problem, it shouldn't be my way or the highway. It should be sitting down with the teachers, listening to them, trying to work with them to get, they're smart people. Teachers are some of the smartest people that I know, and they can understand the issue and be able to help in the decision-making process, and they should be involved. There's some of the teachers that I know in Paducah that they know more about the pension problem than just about anybody you would meet because they have really in-depth studied it. They care about it, and I will go and listen to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we dismiss for the night, we would like to thank all the candidates for coming out. We would also like to thank the Marshall County Daily and WKMS for covering the event, the library for letting us use this room, and the Benton's Woman Club and Juniorettes for providing desserts and refreshments. Thank you for everyone for coming out tonight.